Welcome to Bare Bones. With your hosts, Dr. Mason West.
Welcome into this episode of Bare Bones. As always, I am Dr. Mason West. Today, I'm flying solo for this one, which is a shame because it could be a very interesting matchup here between the Bears and the Ravens. But if you are listening to this live, feel free to jump in the chat, throw out your questions, be a part of the show. You know, it's not super fun just to talk for an hour by yourself. So I will try to fill in as much as I can, though, with the knowledge that I do have, especially because I know a lot of you are here for the injury aspect of it when it comes to both the Bears, but also for this matchup, the Ravens. A couple of quick hitters here just to talk through news-wise from this past week. Prime Video has reached a global broadcast agreement with the NFL to stream the Black Friday game between the Eagles and Bears to a worldwide audience. It marks the first ever NFL game to stream globally on Prime Video. It's going to be available in over 240 countries and territories with no subscription or Prime membership required. I think, one, this says something about the current trajectory of the NFL, which is pretty great. The international view is really the next horizon for them. You're seeing that with a number of international games that have already happened this year. It can be a bit annoying for the teams. If you want to get a look at it, actually, the Chargers did a pretty good job for their week 1 game where they were in Brazil. There's actually a YouTube video at 20-30 minutes in terms of what they had to do to get ready for that game. Very interesting. But also, too, I think what the league thinks of the Bears to make this, the first one to stream globally in this fashion. The fact that, obviously we know the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, that entire team, but also, former Super Bowl champs, but for the Bears to be a part of that, it's pretty cool. Yes, the Black Friday aspect matters, of course, but also, you could roll this out for a different game potentially, but just, to make this the one means a little something for the Bears. Sports Chicago Style. What's up, Doc? What's up, Sports Chicago Style? Thanks for joining into the stream here. Appreciate you. Couple other things. This came out just today. The Ravens are expected to sign veteran defensive end Carl Lawson per Schultz report. A return to the NFC North for Carl Lawson. Lawson notched 5 sacks last season with the Cowboys and has been waiting for the right opportunity. The Ravens, as we'll get into this, their defense has been hurting. Some of it literally physically, Roquan Smith missed time, Kyle Hamilton missed time, Madubuike's out for the year. We're going to get into all this later too, but just bringing in another defensive end. And it seems like every single year the Ravens are bringing in some defensive end, trying to get their pass rush more juice. They drafted Mike Green this past year, trying to add to that. They had the Jadeveon Clowney experiment before. It's just every single time they're bringing some kind of pass rusher to try to bolster that. We'll see what happens. I don't think it'll affect this game in particular. I mean, there's shape and there's NFL shape. So, and we saw that with actually Jadeveon Clowney when he signed a couple weeks ago. Again, we were wondering, will he play against the Bears, the Cowboys, and he might have saw a snap. I don't even remember. But basically, there's still some ramp up time. A couple things that Ben Johnson said this week. The record really doesn't indicate what they're capable of doing. And that's Ben Johnson facing the Baltimore Ravens. They're a 1-5 team. Now, and I get into this a little bit later, but I think he's absolutely right. The record is not indicative of this team, whether it's the injuries that I just mentioned, whether it's Lamar, that was another injury that obviously matters. And you just look at the matches they had and some of the scores of those games, what's actually going on in those games. So some people are going to look at this as it's a 1-5 team. You should be able to handle them. But, just look at the line. Last I looked at it, it was at -6. So the fact that, Vegas and the whole Lamar Jackson thing's up in the air right now, but the fact that Vegas is saying that, the Ravens are still favored in this game at 1-5 does say something about what they think of what their season has been so far. Bears head coach Ben Johnson said the team will approach this upcoming game against the Ravens as if Lamar Jackson will play on Sunday. I think that's the right way to handle it. First of all, in case he does play, you have to be ready for that. You can't just accident yourself through a Lamar Jackson game, even if he's not at 100%. But, the other two quarterback options, Cooper Rush and Tyler Huntley, they're just not, it's not the same thing. I mean, I'm not saying anything. It's not rocket science. Cooper Rush got pulled actually for Tyler Huntley, and I think Tyler Huntley is a better player. I'm surprised he actually didn't get the nod previously. I think part of that just being that Cooper Rush was there longer. Yes, Tyler Huntley was with the Ravens previously, but not with Todd Monken at OC. So it wouldn't be a surprise to me if it is Tyler Huntley if Lamar can't go over Cooper Rush, because at least Huntley gives you a little more of the mobility thought process. Is not Lamar. It's not even Lamar Light. It's Lamar Seltzer. It's Lamar super duper light. But at least there is some more mobility there than what Cooper Rush can give you. Cooper Rush, I think, does well. If you think about a couple of years ago, he actually came in for Dak Prescott. But that's because at that point, I mean, Dak was playing like your kind of true in the pocket, more statuesque, ripping big throws kind of a quarterback. And Cooper can do more of that traditional style versus what, Lamar, and then to a lesser extent, Tyler Huntley can do. Ben Johnson on Roquan Smith. He is fast. He diagnoses quickly. See ball, get ball, sideline to sideline. He finds a way to get around blocks and to be around the football. We're going to have to do our best to cover him up. He's playing at a super high level. We know what Roquan Smith can do. Obviously, with his time with the Bears, it's not a surprise. He's a sideline to sideline player. He is going to be coming off that injury, so you do wonder what percentage he's at. But even like a 90% Roquan Smith is going to be someone you have to deal with. You don't need him blowing up, especially your horizontal plays. That's something that the Bears have not done super well. You've seen a couple of those, end rounds to Luther Burden. DJ Moore's gotten involved in that. That has not been some of your more successful plays. Same thing with the screen game. It's been very okay. But the Bears have seen a lot of success with some of the wide zone one cut runs from DeAndre Swift. And if you're trying to run into the C or D gap, that is something that Roquan Smith can mess up for you. So you have to take him into account and to cover him up. One thing I just thought was funny, the Ravens' removal of the ping pong tables. That was something that happened earlier in the week and was discussed. And the removal of the ping pong tables and other games from the locker room was actually initiated by the veteran leaders of the team, not the coaching staff. It wasn't a punishment. The players wanted them out. So two things. One, great. It wasn't just the coaches being like, hey, we're almost overreacting and pulling, treating them like children. We're going to remove the basketball hoops and the ping pong tables and what have you from there. The second thing is that there's a bit of a desperation to the Ravens. And I don't think that's, again, saying anything that wouldn't be at least guessed at. At the end of the day, this team is a team that had Super Bowl aspirations. They're 1-5, and they're grasping at straws on how to get the locker room in order, hoping that gets what's on the field in order. But that being said, a desperate team is dangerous. Right? If you look at the Saints, you look at the Raiders. The Raiders are a perfect example. At that time, the Raiders season really, when they were playing the Bears, could have gone either way. If the Raiders had been able to gut out a win there, you could absolutely see them using that as a trajectory point to try to salvage their season. It didn't go that way, and you can still see the Raiders heading the wrong direction. The Bears were the opposite of that, right? That could have been a point where the Bears spiral, and it continues to be a bad season. So for the Ravens, even if certain players aren't playing, you can still expect this to be a hard-fought game by the players that are in that locker room, removing ping pong tables. All right, that's it for the chart review. Training room roundup, what a lot of people are here waiting for, looking for. The Bears have a laundry list here. Hold on, a little sip of my Revolution. One thing I'm very excited about, I'm drinking a Rye Way to Heaven, for anyone that's curious. It's now barrel-aged beer season. I'll be at FOBAB, happens in Chicago, Festival of Barrel-Aged Beer, but just in a little sidebar there. So what we're going to run through. Roschon, there's really not a lot of information for some of these. Like, for example, Roschon Johnson is on the injury report with the back issue. He did not participate the last two games, or the last two practices. It's hard to say exactly when that happened. He's just been kind of a ghost. I mean, he will randomly get a carry and get an 11-yard run, and then all of a sudden you never see him again. You saw that the previous game. he had a 6-yard run. It was considered a successful run, but didn't get any more carries. It doesn't kill you with Roshan out, right? I mean, you'd like him to be available. I've always been a Roshan guy and think he's a viable running back 2-3 in this league. But if his back holds him out, you're looking at Travis Homer, who got elevated or brought off of IR finally last week to maybe give you a couple carries here and there. And you could always look at your practice squad, but it's not the end of the end of any. It's not the worst thing in the world. Braxton Jones limited previously and then did not participate today. I mean, you're looking at that. That's your break in case of emergency. Heaven forbid, knock on my wood table here, that something happens with Theo Benedict or Darnell Wright. The fact that he went from limited to did not participate, I'm assuming he got hurt that knee in Wednesday's practice and then didn't participate today. Cole Kmet, 2 straight DNPs with the back. Cole definitely looked hobbled last game at a certain point. Pretty obvious that there was something not great going on there. Backs are tricky. It's hard to say exactly what went on. There's no information I have specifically insider-wise. If you're just talking spasms, if you're talking a herniated disc or anything of that nature. Just with the fact that it's DNPs at this point and not, just going to an IR or a surgery or something of that nature, my guess would be something more like some spasms. But again, that's a total guess. Of the DNP people, Cole's probably the one I would think has a chance to play just because he's such a tough guy, and back's one of those things where you could be debilitated for a day or two, and then with the right treatment, the right medication, you can potentially come out on the other side of it. So let's see what happens Friday. Tyreek Stevenson, I believe, and I'm saying I believe, I don't know this from facts. Oh, hey, Dante. I just saw you. Dante, bear down, Doc. Bear down, Dante. Thanks for popping in. Tyreek Stevenson, I believe he might have a shoulder dislocation based off of combination what the video looked like that I saw where I think on the play he got hurt, as well as some stuff I've been hearing. If it is, in fact, a shoulder dislocation, you can potentially play with that wearing a brace. Now, go back, Jalen Johnson coming out of college. He was a guy who had recurrent shoulder dislocations and actually ended up getting what's called the ladder jet procedure, which is basically you take a little piece of bone and you put it as almost a little wedge in the shoulder so that you no longer have your shoulder pop out and forward. So the fact that he's DNPs and not on IR and, not getting surgery, that's a good sign. There's right now, and it depends on really how much damage is done to the area. So whenever you dislocate, you always have ligament damage. That just is what it is. That's why it dislocated, right? Because at the shoulder, it's a ball and socket joint. Shoulder sits in that socket. If you're not watching live, I'm putting my fist into the cup of my hand, and the things that are keeping it in there are the passive structures. So that's going to be your ligaments, and then you're going to have your active structures like your muscles. Both of them have to work there. If it dislocates, usually forward, anteriorly, we would say, you're going to have that's damage of the ligaments. So the question is, how much damage is there? And then what you're doing, if it's a small to medium amount, you're talking about, managing the swelling, managing the pain, getting those dynamic muscles to try to stabilize better. If you throw a brace on it, you could be okay. Again, that could be something that he turns around with and can participate. If he has limited participation on Friday, he might be playing. But if you're talking more like a medium to high, ton of tissue damage there, ton of swelling there, that's a problem. And now all of a sudden, that's where you have to let all that inflammation go down, because once there's inflammation in the area, that's going to inhibit muscle strength. So you're not going to be able to have that dynamic stability to keep the shoulder safe from future dislocations. So for him, it's huge to see what's going to look like on Friday. Sports Chicago Style just said, don't want to see no weak shoulders going against Derrick Henry. That is so true. Derrick Henry is not the back that you can be doing, arm tackles with. He's going to be a guy that you have to wrap up. You have to attack his legs because he's just such a massive human being. The guy was built in a lab. You can't be dealing with that. Joe Tooney, it was just a rest day. Don't worry about it. The two that popped up, limited participation. Tremaine Edmonds, ankle, and then Kyler Gordon, groin/calf, limited participant. So the thing to highlight with that there were new additions to the injury report. Limited practice means you did not do a complete practice. So the part that can be frustrating with that in terms of dissecting it is that means you could have participated in 1% of the practice. You could have participated in 99% of the practice and you sat out for one drill, or whatever the case might be. So being limited doesn't mean anything super good. It doesn't mean anything super bad. The fact that they popped up on Thursday and nothing Wednesday means one of two things. Either, something happened at Wednesday's practice and they didn't feel it until that evening going into the next day, or it happened in Thursday's practice and they had to miss a portion of it. Now, when I see ankle limited in that way, I feel better about that than I do groin calf. Soft tissue stuff freaks me out because soft tissue stuff, there's no magic bullet for that. I think I'm pretty dang good at my job as a sports physical therapist, but if you strained a calf, there's not a lot you can do to just make it better magically. It takes time. And there are certain yes, you can do some injections which can help to an extent, but especially something less like the groin, the calf area, they need to be able to withstand eccentric or lengthening kind of loading, and the calf in particular is super important for power when it comes to Kyler. So we'll see. There's a chance that you got to see what Friday looks like. That's the biggest thing. Sometimes I wish I did the show on Fridays because of that. But it's I feel better seeing Tremaine ankle than I do Kyler groin calf, if I'm being completely honest, which is also a bummer because you're getting pretty thin at the cornerback room. So if Kyler has to miss this because he had slid outside last game when Tyreek went out, and so now and Josh Blackwell went in the slot. So now you're looking Jalen Jones potentially coming in for you, along with probably Josh Blackwell. Don't worry about DJ Moore and DeAndre Swift. To me, that's just management for some vet guys. I think DeAndre is going to be pretty much dealing, and DJ will be dealing with those injuries the rest of the year, to be honest. Could they become things? Yes. But until they do, don't worry about it. Austin Booker, again, full participant. So we'll wait and see if when he gets unleashed, finally. He's been full for the last couple of weeks. That show tells me it's a conditioning game readiness thing. He just hasn't been game ready. And so in terms of the football aspect of it, of the cardio and all that. Grady Jarrett went from limited to full, so pretty good chance he'll be back out there. Take that for what you will. If he can't be 100% Grady, I would rather him not be out there because you saw that when he's been hobbled, which makes sense, but he's not a guy that can, at this stage of his career, that can still be effective hobbles. He needs to be as close to 100 as possible. And then the other two big ones I'd like to highlight, Cairo Santos is a full participant and Nashawn Wright, full participant. The Nashawn Wright one is obviously huge because you were running out of cornerbacks. You just are. So he needs to be available. And then with Cairo, little interesting one. What do they do with Cairo at this point? Is he your kicker? Ben Johnson said so last week. What's been interesting, like Jake Moody at this point, because he's a practice squad guy that gets elevated. Any other team can snag him if they really wanted to. I mean, if they work out a deal. So how that works is a team would go right to Jake Moody's representation, say, hey, we want to sign you to our active 53. He can decide if he wants to or not. So in theory, yes, a team maybe has knocked on the door and he says, no, thank you. But in the NFL, NFL stands for not for long. I mean, you got to take your opportunities when they come. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just hasn't, no one's asked him at this point. So for people who are worried about him getting cleared off the practice squad to another team, so far that hasn't been the case. And based on this, unless Cairo has another flare up where he had a setback a couple weeks ago, that's why he ended up missing. He's probably going to be kicking. All right. Ravens. Really not a lot to talk about here. DeAndre Hopkins didn't participate because of an illness. He'll be back. Everyone else is healthy. Besides Lamar Jackson. So if you look at social media, you're seeing a bunch of stuff about he practiced 2 days ago, and then today he basically did the same thing, mainly individual drills. I go back to what I said previously. The dude could have basically dropped back and thrown 3 passes and he'd be limited. The dude could have played the entire practice, but as far as we saw from the media portion, it wasn't any different than it was yesterday, which was very light. So let's have a brief conversation about return to play and when it comes to hamstring, what that looks like. If this is boring, I apologize, but hopefully you're tuning into this because you care about the medical stuff that I bring to the table. So return to play expectations for hamstring are very dependent on the severity, specific muscle involvement, and the athlete's response to progressive rehabilitation. I mean, I've had people where I could treat them the exact same way, they have the exact same strain of hamstring, and they will have completely different outcomes for so many reasons. Some of it's body composition, some of it is, hydration, some of it's sleep, some of it's structural, biomechanical differences, and there's just so many things that come along with this. But in general, a grade 1 strain you can get back with unrestricted participation in about 1 to 2 weeks, which in theory, if it was a grade 1, that might be where he's at. Grade 2 is a moderate, approximately 2 to 4 weeks. That's restoration of strength, flexibility, and functional capacity. And then grade 3s are severe. That's 6 weeks or longer. If that was the case, he would have been put on IR, if we're being honest. So my thought is, especially with how little he's participated in all that, it's a grade 2. Now, going back to my soft tissue versus kind of joint conversation, a joint, you can tend to just kind of let rest, not do a lot, and over time it can get better. I mean, in a perfect rehab world, you want to still there's certain things you want to be doing, don't get me wrong, but rest can do the body good when it comes to some joint stuff. When it comes to muscle, you're attacking it, right? You're loading it in all the different ways, concentrically, which is the shortening of the muscle, eccentrically, the lengthening of the muscle, isometrically, so just maintaining position of the muscle. And then especially when it comes to hamstring, it's just so important when it comes to force production. It decelerates the leg, right? When you're running, it creates force. Like, think about that rotational aspect, the driving of the leg. So hamstring is just so important there. In terms of return to play progression, there's a lot of different stuff you have to look at. Resolution of pain and restoration of full symmetrical range of motion. If you don't hit that, you can't play. At least if you're trying to actually treat someone appropriately. I mean, obviously, yes, I've seen cases where professional athletes have been cleared without this, but that's because the athlete and the team is being dumb. Demonstration of at least 90 to 95% strength symmetry on isokinetic or handheld dynamometry. In my clinic, we use something called a force frame. It's from the company called Wald. Basically what it is, you put the athlete at different angles of knee flexion and have them just pull as hard as they can, activating that hamstring. And you want them within 90%. So at most a 10% discrepancy at all of the angles, positions you're going to test. With successful completion of graded sprinting and sports specific functional testing without pain, apprehension, or compensatory movements, then you could potentially move on. Right. So when I say that, again, it's a slow ramp up, right? You're going to just sprint straight line. You're going to sprint and do cutting. You're going to, do sport specific stuff. Like, so for Lamar Jackson, can he do his magic whirly bird, all that jazz kind of a thing? Now, I had someone ask me, could Lamar play just as a pocket quarterback? 2 problems with that. 1, muscle memory and just the baller in him. Can you really take it yourself? If any of us, even like think back when we were playing sports, whether it was high school or it was college, or even right now, if you're going to play a pickup sport, how good are you at saying, I'm only going to play at 30%, or I'm going to change my game to be able to try to not hurt this or hurt that or put emphasis on this? It's hard to, right? You're in it. You're like, you're A, you're trying to win, and B, muscle memory is going to kick in. And so when he feels pressure, he's going to just say, I'm going to scramble. And can that hamstring hold up to it? So far, I'm not seeing any evidence that that's the case, based off of the timeline, based off what he's been doing and not doing specifically in practice. Also, there was a study done by Bodendorfer, what a name, amongst other individuals. They looked at 2,075 hamstring strain injuries from 2009 to 2020. They found that there's a 38.4% recurrence rate, so that it would happen again, and identified that a short return to play, especially less than 2 weeks, was a strong risk factor for same season recurrence. So another person I was talking to said, well, maybe they push Lamar to play. Lamar wants to play. The team wants him to play because this is it, right? If the Bears lose, if the Ravens lose this, they go 1-6. Their season's basically over. So they have to win this game. So they have to have him out there. I hear that. I understand that. But let's say he plays and he hurts his hamstring again. Or let's say he plays, they lose, they win. I don't really care. Whatever the outcome of the game is. and there's enough stress on this hamstring that it's not fully healing, right? Because now you're putting more damage in it. You just are. When you're playing a football game at not 100%, you're putting damage in that hamstring. I'm telling you that right now. And he strains it again next game, the game after that. They just had their bye, so he's not going to have a week to recover. And now let's go to the far end, the scary end. What if he gets a full rupture of his hamstring off the bone? Right? Think about the stories you heard about Aaron Rodgers, Kevin Durant, Tyrese Halliburton, and so I'm using Achilles as an example. They had calf strains, right? They had pain in their calf. They were managing it for a couple weeks at a time, all that jazz. And then all of a sudden, then they get this Achilles rupture. That's what happens. The muscle cannot take the load, so it goes to the tendon, and then the tendon ends up rupturing because it can't handle that load. This just might be a year of just terrible things that went on for the Ravens, and they just have to punt. Now, the thing is, it just is what it is. So if I was in that training, I don't have his numbers. I don't have his dynamometry data. I don't have his isokinetic data. I don't know what his range of motion is right now. But based off the timeline, based off of what we're seeing from or not seeing in practice, I would be saying you need to wait another week. We need these numbers to be a certain thing. I need to see you on the field doing these things before we can say we're putting you back out there, because it's Lamar freaking Jackson. You can't play with this, right? I mean, yet you have so many years ahead of you as a football player that they have to account for as a franchise quarterback. So that's just my 2 cents on it. If I had to put money on it right now, I don't think he's playing. If he does play, it is not at 100%. Now, the Ravens could say we'd rather have 60% Lamar Jackson than 100% Tyler Huntley, Cooper Rush, whoever. But you are playing with fire in a way that I am not comfortable with, that you are potentially putting this individual's career on the line, and you're putting your franchise on the line. Because if he has a rupture of the hamstring, what does that look like for Lamar Jackson? Does he come back from that the same guy? Now, I know this is a lot of like maybes, ifs, ands, and buts. He could come back, play that game, manage this injury for the rest of the season, and be totally fine. And they go on some crazy Super Bowl run, maybe. But the juice is not worth the squeeze. Not this year. Not with how it's already gone. They're sitting at 1-5. If they were sitting at 5-1, if they were, or maybe more in the middle where you're sitting with at 3-3, maybe. But not with this. Not like this. All right, brief break, and then we're coming back.
Ooh. Okay.
Crisp.
Whoa.
That's really good.
That one's really good too.
That was good.
That's like,
It's so refreshing. Like, it's so good to have right before we go play.
And it has, like,
it
the-
really quenches your thirst.
and it has the right amount of bitterness where it kind of
Yeah,
like.
it's like not too sweet, not too bitter. That's what we were saying with the last one.
I like that. Mango
This one,
turmeric.
this one,
is my favorite.
this one's the best. This one's
No,
the best.
that one. Guys, we're gonna have to
no,
argue
no, I
over
like
this.
this
It's
one.
that one.
No,
I like
this
that one.
one's so good. This one's
I
so
actually,
good.
I used to drink
that one.
kombucha
This one is good.
5 a.m. before practice every day because it woke me up and it made me feel good before practice.
Kombucha is a premium performance-based kombucha crafted specifically for athletes and active individuals. This revitalizing beverage blends the traditional benefits of kombucha with nutritional enhancements to support energy, hydration, and recovery. Made from organic teas and infused with natural electrolytes, kombucha offers a delicious and effective solution to maintain peak performance. Better athletic performance, increased nutrient absorption, improved wellness, and improved cognitive stamina. Use code BEARGUTCHECK for 15% off your order. BEARGUTCHECK. Maybe if Lamar Jackson had more kombucha, he'd be doing better right now, but he hasn't been. Knee-jerk reaction. One hot take going into this week. Ben Johnson is a maniac mad genius. There's a lot of things I could point to support this reaction. The one that I'm going to use is the fact that the Bears lead the league in big plays per game with 8. So that's going to be rushing yards over 10, receptions over 20. The second is the LA Rams, and third is the Buffalo Bills. So you're sitting in pretty good company, right? Those are two teams that have Super Bowl aspirations there. The Bears have had 27 rushes over 10 yards and had 21 receptions over 20 yards. So that's a Ben Johnson stat, right? I mean, take out the The players obviously are important here. Caleb's important. The receivers are important. DeAndre Swift and the running backs, the offensive line, all of that is important. But that is Ben Johnson in his bag. And I am just so happy that he is the Bears head coach. To be perfectly honest, something brutally honest. Speaking of Caleb, I need him to lock in. He has a completion percentage of 61.1. That is 10th worst among QBs with a minimum of 53 pass attempts. So again, there's only 9 other quarterbacks that have a worse completion percentage than Caleb Williams right now. According to Next Gen Stats, he leads the league in expected completion percentage with 70.8%. This means he is, math says, bottom of the league in completion percentage over expectation with a negative 9.7%. The offense is working, right? You see that with the expected 78.8%. Now, there's some subjectivity to this because, like, how do you determine that the expected completion percentage based off of film, based off what they're seeing, based off of separation, based off of time in the pocket, all these things they're expecting this pass to be completed, this pass to not be completed. With all that being said, though, right, I think you watch football long enough, you know that Caleb is missing some passes that he should be hitting. There's other ones, yes, and there's some that are in there. Like Rome had a couple of drops that you'd think he should catch. They're contested catches. That's why you got him. Rome Dune's a big guy. Your ex-receiver should be making those catches. That being said, there are plays that Caleb should be hitting. He is not hitting. I tell you this last podcast. He's not hitting those on the run plays like he did before. Last year he hit a lot more of them. This year, again, yes, some of it's receivers. Like there's a couple I can think of where Cole Kmet should have come back more, but he didn't. There's a couple that I could think of where DeAndre Swift is a good example on that scramble play. Some scramble plays where he's just running the wrong direction. Right, he's not following scramble rules. DJ Moore sometimes where it's like, why are you jogging, my dude? That's still DJ Moore's been better at times, but there's still some effort issues that I'm seeing on when you watch the tape. Don't come at me. I've been on DJ Moore for a bit now. It's still bothersome, but the offense is working. The scheme is working. Ben Johnson, going back to the knee-jerk reaction, is working. Caleb is not taking full advantage. He knows that. He would admit that. So he's at some point. When does that lock in? Well, ain't this humorous? Something quirky or funny. Derrick Henry has been viewed as having a down year this year overall, right? But has he really? You talk to some Bears fans. Some Bears fans are just talking about this as, "Hey, I'm still scared of Derrick Henry," and that you should be. That is a bad man. You talk to other ones, and it's like, he hasn't had a great year. We'll handle this. This year, Derrick Henry has faced the 4th highest 8-man defender percentage with 36.36%. So he has 8 men in the box 36% of the time, 4th highest. This is not a new thing for Derrick Henry. He had the 3rd highest percentage last year. And last year, right, was a renaissance year for running backs, him, Saquon Barkley, and all that jazz. He's 15th in rushing yards. He is 10th in rushing yards per game, 10th in touchdowns with 4, and 5th in 20-plus yard rushing plays with 4. I just think because he doesn't add much to your passing game. I think he has, 4 receptions on the year. He's down on touchdowns a little bit. That's more the Ravens' offense as a whole. And also you have guys like Jonathan Taylor who have 10 and just make it look worse. And then when you look at fantasy production, the above factors are part of that. And people are also annoyed he's running back 18 instead of a top 5 guy. And the Ravens as a whole have struggled. So, he gets lumped into that. But again, Derrick Henry is a bad man. It's not necessarily the year you'd expect from a guy like Derrick Henry, but at the same time, it's not a skill issue or a massive decline on his part. There are other factors that are part of that too. So still circle him as I am worried about him for this game situation. All right, another break, and then we're going to move on to some specifics on this game. We have merch. I've talked about this the last couple of times on the podcast. Pretty cool stuff. There's hats, there's shirts, there's beer mugs. There's, if you're not a beer person, there are like little rock glasses. Excuse me, I can't talk. If you're not an alcohol person, there's water bottles. There are so many things that you can get to represent not just Bare Bones, but other podcasts as well. I'm not a big guy in terms of asking for, hey, buy this, buy that. But at the same time, one is I think it's cool stuff. I have a couple shirts, I have a hat. I wear it a bunch, super comfy. But also, two, it does help the podcast, right? The money that y'all do to support us, and whether it's this, whether it's super chats, all that stuff ultimately goes to letting us do cool things. Like I keep mentioning this, but a couple years ago we did an in-person draft show. That was awesome. It was so cool interacting with people that came to that show, letting people talk to us, talk to them, and doing giveaways. We gave away so much stuff during that show. That was awesome. So we'd like to do more of that. So if you're watching live or if you're listening to the podcast version, come to the 30-second part of the show and you can scan the QR code. That'll bring you right to the website. If you don't want to do that, the website is second-city-gridiron-shop.forethought.com. You can also just Google Second City Gridiron. When we're on that note, go ahead. If you're listening to this, head to the YouTube, like, thumbs up, subscribe. We can look at the metrics and we can see a lot of people that listen to the podcast, that watch the YouTube video, they don't subscribe. But that helps us get into the living rooms, the whatevers, the ears of other Bears fans. So leave a comment. You know what? Go ahead right now. Go give me a prediction. What you think the Bears score will be against the Ravens. You know what? And I might just do a giveaway and pick someone who comments on YouTube with a score and give them some merch too. So go ahead, head to the YouTube and do all that stuff, please. And thank you. Appreciate y'all. You guys are awesome. What you need to know. So this is going to be just some specific stats and some storylines for the upcoming game. The Bears versus Ravens rivalry has been played 7 times, with the Chicago Bears winning 4 games and the Ravens winning 3 games. Last game, Ravens won 16-13 in an awful game at Soldier Field, where Snoop Huntley, right, the Snoop Huntley, Tyler Huntley that I talked about earlier in the show, beat the Bears. I remember that was the year I got my start with Chicago Audible. I got to sit in the press box that entire season. That was pretty dope, and I got to see Snoop Huntley beat the Bears at Soldier Field with Justin Fields also in that game. So that was lame. The dad, Papa of the podcast, Lester Wiltfong, shout out, had this stat, and I'm going to steal it from him, but give him credit. John Harbaugh, coming off a bye, is 13-4. Now you can take that a couple of different ways. One, the Ravens are just awesome. They are. They're a great team from the top down, from the ownership to GM to Harbaugh. You could also look at that, tie that back to Lamar Jackson conversation. Is there just an expectation that, we can just, coming off a bye, we are a team that can then just do this. So do we even need Lamar? Kind of a thought process. We'll see. A couple stats here that I think are just fun. The Bears allow the 5th most rush yards still to running backs at 110.8 per game. They allow the 2nd most receiving touchdowns to running backs, 3. So this goes to my Derrick Henry point. They actually allow the 3rd most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers with 10. They allow the 8th most targets, 8.17 per game, and 2nd most receptions, 7.00 per game, to tight ends. And they allow the 2nd most passing touchdowns to quarterbacks. Now, a lot of that, obviously, there's some were the rough couple first 2 games, but still something to keep in mind. More positive note, the Bears have the most interceptions in the league with 11. The Ravens allow the 7th most rushing attempts and 6th most rushing yards to running backs. They allow 3rd most rushing touchdowns to running backs. This rushing defense is not good. That's the story behind this. They allow the 6th most targets and 5th most receptions to running backs. And they allow the 8th most receiving yards to running backs. So DeAndre Swift game, let's go. Kyle Monangai, let's get at it. The Ravens also allow the 5th most receptions to tight ends. Post Loveland, looking at you. They allow the 6th most receiving yards to tight ends. They allow the 5th most pass completions and most pass attempts to quarterbacks. They allow the 7th most passing yards to quarterbacks, and they allow the 3rd most passing touchdowns to quarterbacks. So going back to my lock it in Caleb conversation, here we go. This is a defense that you can do that against. Couple questions that were just kind of rattling around my brain this week. For the Bears, does a win versus a Lamarless Ravens mean less? I'd be very curious if you're listening to this. Throw your ideas in the chat on this. This is a very subjective thing. There's no right or wrong answer. I would say no. It doesn't mean less. I think that, at some point, yes, you have to play the best and beat the best. I know some people will say if you look at Super Bowls, if you look at records, there are no asterisks. You don't put that, hey, you didn't play against this quarterback, you didn't play against that safety, you didn't this, then that. The record's your record. But at the same time, some of us know, you know, like there's that one Giants year with Daniel Jones. So now this is a little silly, now there's the Daniel Jones Colts team, which is insane. But that Giants team faked its way to the playoffs and got embarrassed in the playoffs. That was a fake team. Now their record and the playoff berth and all that are still there. You can't take that away, but you know a little bit. But still, a win is a win, like especially against a Ravens team that they're well coached. Harbaugh is one of the best ones out there. Sports Chicago style agrees with me. W's a W, can only play who's available / healthy. Totally agree. Right, it's whoever's in front of you. So, speaking of the Ravens, they sit at 1-5. Ravens have lost to the Bills, Lions, Chiefs, Texans, and Rams without Lamar Jackson. Their only win was against the Browns. Who are the Ravens? The Ravens are a victim of being a good team, in my opinion. Right? Again, they lost to the Bills, where they almost won that game, and that was an awesome Week 1 game. They lost to the Lions, who is arguably one of the best teams in the league right now. I mean, I would say they're at least, in my opinion, probably the second best team in the league. The Chiefs, who they played the Chiefs when the Chiefs started getting some players back and figuring out their mojo again. The Texans, that one's a little iffy. The Texans have not been very good, if we're being completely honest, but they still have CJ Stroud, who I think is a good quarterback. They still have a very good defense. And then the Rams. And the Rams are real. Yeah, Puka's out right now, but that Devontae, Puka, Matthew Stafford, and they got Jared Verse on defense. That's a good team. So losing those games is not an issue. But you're playing very good teams because you were a first place team. That's just what happens. And unfortunately, with the injuries that the Ravens have sustained and some other factors, they just have not been able to buoy themselves in a way and to win those. So who are the Ravens? Again, a victim of their own success. Now, the thing that sucks for the Ravens, and one of the reasons why they might push Lamar to play this game, their upcoming games are much easier. You play the Dolphins, you play the Jets. You can get some wins here. I'm getting a good number of wins. Bears have a better record at 4-2 than the Ravens. Does this 4-2 feel same or different than last year? To me, it feels very different. This 4-2, especially, some of it is trajectory, right? And winning 4 games in a row is very helpful, but how you're winning them is better. Now, I know you could point to probably maybe the Titans game last year and say that's similar to the Raiders game. You barely beat a good team, and it was mainly because of issues on the other team's part. But even that, the Titans in the Surrender Cobra game against Will Levis just felt different than the fight. It felt like the Bears stumbled into a win against the Titans last year versus they fought to stay in it and win against the Raiders. Playing the Commanders the way that they did, that matters. Beating the Cowboys like they did, that might be very kind of Jaguars-esque in terms of the game last year, but that matters. So to me, this 4-2 team feels very different. Last game, the Canadian Eagle, Theo Benedict, struggled a bit against Chase Young, particularly in pass pro after a lauded performance 2 weeks ago. Is the real Benedict experience the Saints one or the Commanders version? I'm going to take the easy answer and say it's in the middle, if you're being completely honest. I think against the Commanders, their edges just are nowhere near as good as who Chase Young is. Chase Young is still a good edge, and Chase Young pretty much beat up on Theo Benedict the entire time. Now, that does make me worried when you're going to go play some of the better teams. So let's say when the Lions come to town, when you're going to have to go against Micah Parsons and the Packers, when you go against the Vikings and their good defensive line. I'm just naming a couple examples here. You still have to play the Eagles. They're bringing back Brandon Graham. That's where their state of their pass rush is right now. It's not great, but still, what does that look like? So it's still to be decided. I think it's probably closer to the Saints game than the Commanders game, if we're being completely honest. But that was only his second start, so I don't want to peg the guy, and paint him in a certain light. So we'll ultimately see. All right, let's move on. Love it, hate it, rehabilitate it. Something that I love about the game, something I hate in terms of the matchups, and something that, if it were me, I would rehabilitate. Love. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I love the Bears rush game versus the Ravens rush defense. I read those stats previously, but in addition to that, the Bears have 3-6-7 rushing in the last 2 games. Chicago Bears had a 54% rushing success rate in week 7 of last week. Their game against the Dallas Cowboys, Washington Commanders, and New Orleans Saints are in the top 7 of rushing success rate in the franchise's last 200 games. Shout out to Nate Tice for that stat. Awesome stat. Well, also awesome for the Bears. The Ravens are the 5th worst rushing defense by success rate, allowing 46.9% successful runs. Literally almost every other run is successful against them. That's not good. I mentioned this earlier, but losing Madubuike was huge for them up the middle. They just have not, and they have no one there to take the slack on that. So expect another run-heavy day for the Bears. So DeAndre Swift, Kamanungai, fantasy owners, right? You should be excited. Hates. It's got to be, even though they don't have a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, even like a Chris Olave to an extent, the wide receivers, the Ravens are still solid, right? Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews has been pretty much invisible this year, besides one game for the Ravens. But you don't necessarily want this to be a get right game for the tight end either. All that being said, I mean, I mentioned earlier, it's just depleted corners. Jalen Johnson is out, except for maybe the last week or 2 of the season, potential playoff run. You have Tyreek Stevenson, who's probably going to miss. You're down. It's that you have guys who are out for the year who you're hoping to be depth for you. So if you have to roll out there with Nashawn Wright as your corner 1, that's a problem. And I'm not super thrilled about it, especially if Lamar does play, which again, I'm not really sure he does. Rehabilitate. In my opinion, you have to either go full all throws lead to Rome or find a way to divvy the ball up. Rome is 2nd in the NFL in percent share of the team's air yards with 43.32%, only behind Jackson Smith-Njigba. Last week, Rome had 2 receptions on 6 targets for 31 yards. Again, 2 of those targets were drops on his part. Contested catches, don't get me wrong. They were not easy, but you draft him where you drafted him to make those catches. When Rome gets fed, the offense looks good. But if that connection is off in a game, you need to find a way to get chunk plays in other ways. So I'm leaning towards feed the big man kind of mentality. Don't throw into double coverage. We've seen Caleb do that, where it's a couple of times where it's a deep ball and it's just, hey, Rome's down there somewhere. And so right now Rome is not winning those, and so I wouldn't do that. But the schemed ones, get him early, get him often. And if you're not doing that, you have to scheme up ways. I need more Colson Loveland too. Think about what the world right now for Tyler Warren in Indianapolis. Tyler Warren is a good football player. When we did a mock draft on here, I took him. I never took Loveland in any of my mocks, and that was just because I felt that Tyler Warren could be a contributor right away because of how flexible he is and just a multi-tool. That being said, he's also specifically schemed looks by Nick Sirianni. There are plays where Warren is the first read, and there's a lot of those. We need more of that for Colson Loveland. Now, I don't know if part of it is, a little behind as a rookie. I don't know if part of it is because of coming back from the shoulder surgery, just that process. Plus, if we're being honest, just, the fact that Rome and DJ Moore and DeAndre Swift and, even Cole Kmet to an extent, you can go down the list. And then clearly also they still value Zacchaeus. Burden is working his way in. Where does Loveland fall in the pecking order? Compare that, in my opinion, to the Colts. I like Alec Pierce. I like Josh Downs. I like A.D. Mitchell when he's not fumbling the football, but I'm not taking Michael Pittman. I almost didn't mention him. But I'm not taking them over Rome. I just think the quality of the Colts are perfect. We have all the pieces that complement each other team. Each individual player is not fantastic. So I think the mouths to feed part is another layer to that conversation. But anyway, yes, get Rome the ball more frequently, more often. X Factor for the Ravens. With how the year has looked so far, it's kind of weird. Just let Caleb sit back and pass and have him make a mistake. Learn, either you live or die by that. That sounds bad, but when you look at it, Caleb has a 0.42 EPA per play and has generated a total of 21.55 EPA against the blitz this season. That's with 51 blitzes. On a traditional dropback, so not blitzing, Caleb's EPA is 0.08 and only a total of 11.20 total EPA. So some of this is sample size, of course, but it also seems that when Caleb has to just react, Caleb is on it. Like, it's like, oh, shoot, pressure's coming, ball has to get out. Much, much better than when you have him sit back and he's going 1, 2, 3, oh, shoot, pressure's got, now all of a sudden. So for me, it's until he proves otherwise, let Caleb beat you. And as a Bears fan, I'm hoping that for that, right? Like, I'm hoping that is this the game that he just sits back there and picks apart a defense. But as of right now, we haven't seen that yet. Hey, Snoop Von Poop in the chat. Love saying that name. What up, Mason? Bear down. Let's beat the Ravens this week. Let's do it, Snoop. Let's do it, Mr. Von Poop. Beat the Ravens. Next one, we got X Factor for the Bears. Establish the run. For all the reasons I said before, but also Matt Harmon at Matt Harmon _BYB, football writer and analyst for Yahoo, creator of Reception Perception, just awesome content. If anyone wants to just blast Matt Harmon and with Twitter stuff to have him come on the show, would absolutely love to have him on here. He just, will return my phone calls kind of thing. A Bears rushing game the last 2 weeks on running back runs only. Here are the stats. They rank first with 174.5 yards per game. They rank first with 54.7% of carries to gain 5+ yards. They rank first in 26.4% of carries to gain 10+ yards. They rank second in 35.8% of carries to gain for a first down or touchdown. They rank first with 3.57 yards before contact per carry. That's the offensive line stat. And 13th in yards per contact per carry, that 3.02. So the worst of that is still the after contact. So there's a perfect example of that. Last game, DeAndre Swift had a run, and it was just him and the safety. And it was like the safety, got his shoestring and DeAndre went down. I've had my troubles with DeAndre in the past. I'm trying to put that behind me, but I still think he's a little too easy and a good bit too easy to bring down. Now he's taking more advantage of what's available to him, which is huge. That's all I really need of him. But the after contact stuff still is wanting a bit. We're going to skip our over-unders because it's just silly for me to pick an over-under that I had generated myself. So we're going to do Bear gut check this next. I use my gut feelings, revitalized by kombucha, of course, to give game predictions against the line. First one I got is the Bears game. Bears at Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 6, at least last time I looked at it. Unsure if anyone else has seen that line shift. I'm picking the Bears. I am. I mean, even if Lamar plays, it's closer, but I just think that Lamar is not going to be playing anywhere near 100% if he plays. There's a chance that he has to leave the game. I mean, I could absolutely see it's halfway through the first quarter and Lamar's out because he has a recurrence of that hamstring. And if anyone's had a hamstring strain, that stuff sucks. It's awful. But anyway, obviously, if Lamar plays like Lamar, it's a totally different game. But I mean, I felt confident enough about this. I actually did a bet on insert a platform here where I adjusted the line. I moved it to Bears minus 6.5. That's how confident I am that the Bears are going to win this because of, and not just the Lamar stuff, the run game stuff. If you can dominate a team in the run game, you will win football games because that eats up the clock. It wears down on the other team. The offense is sitting on the sideline, picking their noses, being like frustrated that they can't get the ball. And at the end of the day, too, I mean, I know some people are frustrated with Caleb. I just voiced some of my frustrations previously, but it's still so different than Mitch, than Justin. And you can see that. And at the end of the day, and Ben, I trust. Ben Johnson, I said it earlier, madman, genius, just a psychopath in the best way possible. And I mean that, with all the love in the world. I trust Ben Johnson. I trust Dennis Allen. I trust this defense. I'm a little worried about those guys secondary, but I truly believe the Bears win this and win this handedly by a touchdown. Tonight's game, Thursday Night Football, Vikings at Chargers. We got news that Aaron Jones is active now for the Vikings, so that's going to really help the complexion of that team. You still want Jordan Mason to do some of the heavy lifting, carrying the ball, but Aaron Jones is still a good running back, ball carrier, and he brings a lot to the pass game. Bears fans, unfortunately, will remember a couple of pass receptions he had, one for a touchdown to help the Vikings beat the Bears in week 1. So I'm going to take the Vikings to actually underdog win this. Carson Wentz, they avoid the Carson Wentz BS for another week. And then we see what happens with the whole JJ thing. Kevin O'Connell was on record saying that if it was a full week, if they're playing on Sunday, he thinks that there was a chance JJ would have played. So I still think there's a little bit of some, and at least initially oh man, JJ has to sit for a bit kind of thing. Because if he's going to be out this long, they would have put him on IR. Also at the same time, obviously, yes, you don't know exactly how any injury is going to go. I know that. I have patients who, that's why I never give direct timelines. When a patient's like, how long am I going to be in PT for? I'm like, I can't tell you that. But yeah, that being said, it'll be interesting to see where that goes for them. Jets at Bengals. The Bengals are the Bears' next opponent. That's why I threw them on this. Bengals are favored by 6.5. Last time I grabbed that number. I will take the Bengals to cover that. I know it's a surprisingly big-ish number, but the Jets are a mess. They're not even playing hard anymore. They don't know who the quarterback's going to be. It was supposed to be Tyrod Taylor, but he's got a knee thing, so now they don't even know. I mean, it went as far as I had picked up Tyrod because I had an emergency quarterback situation in fantasy. I had to drop him and pick up Carson Wentz because I don't know if he's going to play. And the Bengals are coming off a little bit of swagger, at least with that win over Pittsburgh last week. Also kind of weird. The Bears traveled to Baltimore and then traveled to Bengals in 2 consecutive weeks, but whatever. I'm not making the schedule, so no one asked me. Next game, Packers at Steelers. Packers are favored by 3. I think that's an insanely low number. I'm taking the Packers. I know they've had their issues, but the Steelers are just, in my opinion, beating up on not great opponents, and they're going to win also that division just because that division sucks right now with the Ravens, with where they're at, with the Bengals, with where they're at, the Browns, where they're at. I mean, the Steelers are a fake team. Have fun losing the wild card. Packers win. Giants at Eagles. Eagles favored by 7.5. No love for the hot-ish Giants. They're giving up, obviously, a 19-point lead they had in the fourth quarter, giving up 30-plus points overall in the fourth quarter. That's rough. A.J. Brown still isn't practicing. I'm going to pick the Giants to cover. I don't think they win, but I think it's a closer game. I don't think the Eagles win by more than a touchdown. Put this one on there because the Bears play the Giants in 2 weeks, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Eagles on Black Friday. So you may want to tune into that game if you have the opportunity just to see 2 upcoming opponents for the Bears. Lastly, a Coccyx and Bulls story. Oh, I should actually change. Whoop. Banner. Coccyx and Bulls story. This is a bold prediction. I'll do one of each, offense, defense. My offensive one, Colson Loveland gets a touchdown. My defensive one is that, I was going to say one and I changed it immediately. I'm going to say Jaquan Brisker gets an interception in this game. It's going to be a weird one, like within 5 yards where the ball is tipped, but because he was on a blitz, he just happens to be in that spot and he picks it off from a Snoop Huntley throw. All right. That is all that I have for y'all today. Thanks for tuning into the show today. Again, a little different this year. Yeah, there's been a lot more solo just because there's been some weird scheduling things going on. But for the most part, there shouldn't be too many of those. There'll be a couple other ones, like the Thanksgiving one. I'm not going to make people pop on this for Thanksgiving show. That would just be mean. That one might be an early morning Black Friday show. Same thing for the one that's on Christmas or whatever. That one might be a little different, but for the rest of the season, there should be another guest here, whether it's Danny or someone else helping, sub in. Please, again, head over to YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, retweet this video on Twitter. If you ever have any questions, comments, considerations, shoot me a DM. Hit me up on Twitter. I do the best I can to respond to everyone's questions, whether it's Soup Bears related, whether it's injury related or whatever. I do the best I can. I will not give medical advice over Twitter. I have to see you in person for that. Just because it just would be wrong. And I don't want to give someone bad advice, but I'll do the best I can just to lead people in the right direction. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Overall fun show. Hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of your evening. Bear down.